the shadow of the atom. The 20th century was a crucible of conflict, a battleground of ideologies. But amidst the world wars and regional skirmishes, one looming threat cast a long, chilling shadow: the Cold War. A war fought not with open battles and sweeping offensives, but with whispers and shadows, with proxy conflicts and the ever-present specter of nuclear annihilation. It was a war defined by tension, by mistrust, by the terrifying balance of power, known as mutually assured destruction, MAD. But what if the Cold War hadn't remained cold? What if the carefully constructed balance had shattered and the world had plunged into the abyss of nuclear conflict? Tonight, we explore that chilling what-if scenario, a journey into a potential future that, thankfully, never was. A world divided, the roots of conflict. To understand the potential for a hot war, we must first understand the roots of the Cold War itself. It wasn't simply a clash of superpowers, it was a clash of ideologies. On one side, the United States, champion of liberal democracy and capitalism. On the other, the Soviet Union, the self-proclaimed vanguard of communism. These two titans, born from the ashes of World War II, viewed each other with deep suspicion, each convinced of its own moral superiority and the inherent threat posed by the other. The world became a chessboard, with nations as pawns in a global game of strategy. Europe was divided by the Iron Curtain, a symbolic and physical barrier separating East and West. Berlin, a city deep within Soviet-controlled territory, became a flashpoint, a symbol of the divided world. Proxy wars raged in Korea, Vietnam, and elsewhere, with the superpowers backing opposing sides, fueling the flames of conflict without directly confronting each other. The arms race, building the doomsday machine. The Cold War was characterized by an unprecedented arms race. Both the US and the Soviet Union poured vast resources into developing ever more powerful and destructive weapons. Nuclear arsenals grew exponentially, from the atomic bombs that devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki to the hydrogen bombs, thousands of times more powerful. ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, capable of delivering nuclear warheads across continents in minutes, became the ultimate symbol of the nuclear age. Submarines, silently patrolling the oceans, carrying their own deadly payloads, added another layer to the complex web of deterrence. The world lived under the shadow of the mushroom cloud, knowing that at any moment, the delicate balance could be shattered and the unthinkable could happen. Flashpoints of tension, the brink of war. The Cold War wasn't a period of uninterrupted peace. Several times, the world teetered on the brink of nuclear war. The Berlin blockade, the Cuban Missile Crisis, these were moments of extreme tension, when miscalculation or accident could have triggered a catastrophic chain of events. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962, the world held its breath as the US and the Soviet Union engaged in a tense standoff over Soviet missiles deployed in Cuba, just miles from the American coast. For 13 days, the world waited, fearing the worst. Diplomatic back channels worked furiously, and finally, a compromise was reached. The Soviets removed the missiles from Cuba, and the US secretly agreed to remove missiles from Turkey. But the crisis served as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the ever-present danger of nuclear war. Hypothetical scenarios. What might have been? So let's explore some hypothetical scenarios. What if the Cuban Missile Crisis had ended differently? What if a Soviet submarine captain faced with a perceived attack had launched a nuclear torpedo? What if a technical malfunction in a radar system had been misinterpreted as an incoming missile attack? These are just a few of the many potential triggers that could have ignited a nuclear conflagration. Imagine a scenario where tensions escalate in Berlin. A border incident, a misunderstanding, could quickly spiral out of control. Conventional forces clash, and as the fighting intensifies, tactical nuclear weapons are deployed. The line between conventional and nuclear war becomes blurred, and the world hurtles towards the abyss. Or consider a scenario where a proxy war, like the Vietnam War, escalates. The US, facing setbacks, might consider using tactical nuclear weapons to turn the tide. The Soviets, in response, might escalate their support for the North Vietnamese, leading to a direct confrontation. The first strike, a cascade of destruction. In the event of a nuclear war, the first strike would be crucial. Both sides knew that the advantage lay in striking first, crippling the enemy's ability to retaliate. This created a climate of fear and paranoia, where each side was constantly looking over its shoulder, fearing a preemptive attack. Imagine the scene. Early warning systems detect a massive launch of enemy missiles. The order goes out, retaliate. Within minutes, hundreds, perhaps thousands of nuclear warheads are streaking across the sky, targeting military installations, command centers, and major cities. The world holds its breath, waiting for the inevitable. The environmental catastrophe, a planet in peril. The environmental consequences of a nuclear war would be devastating. The explosions themselves would cause widespread destruction, polluting the air and water with radioactive fallout. Nuclear winter could lead to a global climate catastrophe, disrupting weather patterns and causing widespread famine. The long-term effects of radiation would be felt for generations as ecosystems are damaged and species are driven to extinction. The planet itself could be irrevocably harmed, its ability to support life compromised. The question of humanity: what would we become? In the face of such devastation, what would become of humanity? Would we succumb to despair, losing our humanity in the struggle for survival? Or would we rise to the challenge, finding strength in our shared humanity, rebuilding our world with compassion and resilience? The question is a profound one, and the answer would depend on the choices we make in the aftermath of the catastrophe. A glimmer of hope, the resilience of the human spirit. Despite the bleakness of the scenario, there is always a glimmer of hope. The human spirit is remarkably resilient. Even in the face of unimaginable hardship, people have the capacity to endure, to rebuild, to hope. After a nuclear war, the survivors would face immense challenges, but they would also have the opportunity to create a new world, a world free from the threat of nuclear annihilation. It would be a long and difficult journey, but the possibility of a better future would be the driving force behind their efforts. The warning from history: never forget. The what-if scenario of a hot war serves as a powerful warning from history, a reminder of the destructive power of nuclear weapons and the importance of peace. We must never forget the lessons of the Cold War, the near misses, the moments when the world teetered on the brink. We must continue to work towards a world where nuclear weapons are abolished and the threat of nuclear war is eliminated forever. The future of humanity depends on it. Thank you for joining us on this journey into a world that never was and hopefully never will be. Let us remember the lessons of this hypothetical catastrophe and dedicate ourselves to building a more peaceful and just world for all. The lessons learned: a world without nuclear weapons. The what-if scenario of a hot war serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of nuclear weapons. It highlights the importance of arms control and diplomacy, the need to find peaceful solutions to international disputes. Could the world have learned from this hypothetical catastrophe? Could the threat of nuclear annihilation have spurred a global movement towards disarmament? Could a world without nuclear weapons ever be possible? A new world order, the shape of things to come. In the aftermath of a nuclear war, the global balance of power would be irrevocably altered. The superpowers, once locked in a deadly embrace, would be crippled, their cities destroyed, their populations decimated. New powers might emerge, rising from the ashes of the old. The world map might be redrawn as nations realign and new alliances are forged. But what kind of world would it be? Would it be a world of peace and cooperation, forged in the crucible of shared suffering? Or would it be a world of continued conflict as the struggle for power continues, albeit on a smaller scale? The scars of war, physical and psychological. The scars of a nuclear war would be both physical and psychological. The physical scars would be evident in the ruined cities, the poisoned lands, and the generations of people affected by radiation. But the psychological scars would be just as deep, perhaps even deeper. The survivors would be haunted by the memories of the war, the loss of loved ones, the destruction they witnessed. They would carry the burden of trauma, the knowledge that they had lived through one of the most horrific events in human history. The world as a whole would be scarred, the collective psyche of humanity forever changed by the experience. The loss of knowledge, a dark age revisited. A nuclear war could lead to a significant loss of knowledge. Libraries, universities, and research institutions could be destroyed, taking with them centuries of accumulated wisdom. Scientists, engineers, and other experts could be among the casualties, leaving a void that would be difficult to fill. The world could enter a new dark age, as the knowledge and skills necessary to rebuild civilization are lost or forgotten. The progress of humanity could be set back centuries, perhaps even millennia. The breakdown of society, law and order in a shattered world. In the chaos following a nuclear war, society could break down. Governments might collapse, unable to provide essential services or maintain order. Lawlessness and anarchy could prevail as people struggle to survive in a world without rules. Resources would be scarce, leading to conflict and violence. The social fabric of humanity could be torn apart as trust and cooperation give way to fear and desperation. The nuclear exchange, a world in flames. The impact of a nuclear exchange would be unimaginable. Cities would be vaporized in blinding flashes of light, reduced to rubble and ash in seconds. Millions would die instantly, victims of the blast, the heat, and the radiation. The sky would be filled with mushroom clouds, towering symbols of destruction. The world would be plunged into darkness as dust and debris block out the sun. Nuclear winter, a period of prolonged cold and darkness, could follow, further devastating the environment and making survival even more difficult. The electromagnetic pulse, a powerful surge of energy generated by nuclear explosions, would cripple electronic systems, knocking out power grids, communication networks, and everything that relies on electricity. Society would collapse as governments cease to function and law and order break down. The aftermath, a world transformed. The aftermath of a nuclear war would be a nightmare. The survivors would face a world transformed, a world scarred by radiation, disease, and environmental devastation. The infrastructure would be shattered, making it difficult to provide basic necessities like food, water, and shelter. Hospitals would be overwhelmed, unable to cope with the massive influx of casualties. Radiation sickness would claim countless lives as people succumb to the invisible killer. The long-term effects of radiation would be felt for generations as birth defects, cancers, and other health problems become more common. The environment would be poisoned, making it difficult to grow food or even to find clean water. The world would be a very different place, a place where survival would be a daily struggle. The human cost, stories of survival and loss. But amidst the devastation, there would be stories of survival, stories of courage, and stories of resilience. People would band together, helping each other, sharing what little they have left. Families would be torn apart as loved ones are lost in the chaos. Children would grow up in a world without hope, a world where the past is a distant memory. Imagine a young mother huddled with her children in a makeshift shelter, trying to protect them from the cold and the radiation. Imagine a group of survivors scavenging for food in the ruins of a once great city. Imagine a world where the sky is always gray and the air is filled with the dust of the dead. The long winter, rebuilding a shattered world. The world after a nuclear war would be a long winter, a period of hardship and uncertainty. The survivors would face the daunting task of rebuilding a shattered world. But how do you rebuild a world when everything is broken? How do you restore hope when all seems lost? The challenges would be immense, but the human spirit is strong. Even in the face of unimaginable devastation, people would find the strength to carry on, to rebuild, to hope for a better future.